I thought that I might try and kick off the questions. Christoph, in his talk, spoke about the possibility of civilizing high-rise buildings. And I think that what we're seeing is quite interesting, the way in which some of the buildings have come from the inside out and others from the outside in. And I would ask our panel to give their thoughts about the degree to which the interest today in high-rise buildings comes in the actual form of the building, or in as Christoph has said, in its civilizing possibilities, the possibilities of the activities that can go on inside. And perhaps, since I started with his quote, Christoph, could you talk about that difference between form making and the activities inside?
Difficult to say. I mean, you can't divide architecture in some architecture that gets his idea from inside out and one from outside in. I mean, it has to come all together. Obviously, or in an ideal way, it would be all serving the same idea. But actually, I'm more interested in breaking the rules, and I'm maybe less interested in the pure aesthetic aspects. I think, to be honest, that beauty is a result of right decisions, and right decisions should be done on basis of a very good and deep research. And if you research high-rises, not just this century, but also the last century, you will maybe find out that the most beloved examples are the ones where the accessibility of the house, of the building, maybe even just the accessibility of the site. If you think about the Seagram building, for example, the contribution that the building does, not just to the aesthetical skyline of a city, but as well, or even more, the contribution the building does to the quality of the street life, the accessibility of the place, the security, not in terms of armed security, but in terms of social security that a building can provide, vitalizing the street, vitalizing the city. That is all much more important, I think, than in the foreground thinking about how beautiful a building should be and then following that idea. It's a little bit my kind of approach to buildings like that. It's not that I'm not interested in beautiness, but that's a result of all these thoughts, I think. And there are beautiful examples for that. I admire the buildings I've seen from the colleagues because of that kind of aesthetic quality. But I just want to challenge that a little, because if you look to a power glider, for example, or if you look to an America's Cup sailing ship, there's nothing on the ship, there's nothing on the glider which is not desperately needed. And the sailor would avoid every milligram of additional weight. He would never allow you to put something on which is just decoration or whatever. But the result of that engineering is the most beautiful man-made object that we know. So there's hope, yeah? That also architecture could be the result of that very, very sensible and engineered decisions, and then that beauty is a result of that.
Thank you.
Mark Richards from CH2M Hill. It's a question on skyscapes. As we think about the viewing corridors in London and the other constraints that have a similar nature, do the panel feel that the viewing constraints in time could lead to skyscapes which are unharmonized?
In a way, the view corridors have protected London for a while, and they've certainly kept the prominence of St. Paul's. But I do, and I am supportive of English heritage in this respect, but I do feel that we've got to the point where we need a more sophisticated control system, which is based on a more three-dimensional approach. So I think this is what my interpretation of skyscape is really, is where you actually somehow, the planning issues, try to create an identifiable skyline which they want to try and keep within. I don't think you can control every aspect of it, but you can stop some of the sort of wayward elements where people are trying to create height and density just simply because they own the land. It might not be in the right location. I think we do have to have some control systems in the city, and I think that these are available now, and I think they would be more three-dimensional.
This question is for Chris, Vineet Khanna, architect from India. Do you anyway consider your building in Sydney a high-rise, curvilinear, freeform extension of the Sydney Opera House?
Well, in slightly in contrast to what Christoph was saying, I think that architecture follows technology, and technology certainly is aiding these sustainable aspects of buildings, but also with three-dimensional modeling now, it gives us a chance to explore form in a way that we couldn't, our predecessors couldn't do. So for me, it's a new area of interest, really, the idea that you can create sculptural buildings that aren't just vertical extrusions. And I see that as an opportunity which I like to explore.
Perhaps I can...
May I say something to London, maybe?
Certainly.
I mean, you opened the gate, like, let's say 10 years ago or 15 years ago for skyscrapers in the city of London. And I think you have to be very, very careful who you let in through that gate and who you don't want to have in the city. And there's one aspect I would look at is if your big buildings, or let's say if your normal buildings look like toys, that's okay maybe. If the mid-scale buildings look like toys, that's, I'm afraid, a little bit, okay? And if St. Paul's Cathedral looks like a toy, you have a real problem. So that has nothing to do with saying no to skyscrapers. It has to do with the scale, the form, the material, everything. I mean, you have to show some respect to the city. And because architecture is an extremely globalized business, many architects around the globe tend to misunderstand that building in a city like London is a completely different experience than building, for example, in Dubai or Abu Dhabi or Shanghai. In getting back home, I tell that in a neutral way, okay? In Denmark, for example, I visited Denmark last year. Denmark for me was a little country with many, many very good architects 10 years ago. When I visited Copenhagen last year, I was shocked by the same architects doing buildings in their hometown looking like China, because they missed the scale and they missed the opportunity to do something which is a real dedication to Copenhagen. It was then a dedication to the globalized architectural world. It was not really localized to Copenhagen. So there is a chance for high rises in London, but you have to be extremely careful, I think.
Thank you very much for that comment, and perhaps that can be another topic on another year, which is the difference between the global and the individual scale, because they are quite different as you move around the world. I'd like to especially thank all three of our panelists today, Christoph Ingenhoven, Ian Simpson, and Chris Wilkinson, all of whom have helped contribute to the debate and discussion about high-rise buildings. I thank you all, and please join me in showing our appreciation.